Every year, we try to conclude the Servant Leadership Conference with real stories of servant leadership role models. And when we listen to the three stories this morning, there's several commonalities. Number one is the incredible ability for man's inhumanity to man. We've got to recognize that's part of our world. That's part of the environment we're in right now. You're living it as public servants. You're enduring it. And the second thing that we see in today's world is the incredible, mind-numbing cowardice of political leaders who are so scared that somebody might do a mean tweet of them that they collapse like a house of cards. And then the third thing, the commonality of what you've heard today, is ordinary people responding to horrific circumstances and doing extraordinary things. And what you've got to understand is we are in an era in which 25% of American young people don't believe the Holocaust was real. We have a very high-profile political pundit that last week on Twitter questioned whether you should get on an airplane if it has a black pilot. That's happening now. And that kind of evil thrives when good people are afraid that somebody's going to be mean to them or they may become the target. So we hunker down and we sit there in silence, and with our silence, we become complicit. Our challenge as servant leaders partially is to have the courage to simply do what we know in our heart is right, and to embrace the core concept of servant leadership, that it's not about me and it's not about now. I am so thankful you've been with us this week, and as you leave, there's 4 principles I want to encourage you to live by. Because if you'll really embrace and walk the talk of these 4 principles, you will find that's the beginning of transforming our world, it's the beginning of transforming your relationships, and it's the beginning of healing our nation. Number 1 is to do things right and do the right things. In government in particular, so very often we are extraordinarily effective at doing the wrong things really, really well. We've got to have both sides of that equation. Part of it goes back to some of the performing with excellence that Colonel Harvey spoke with. Doing things right and doing the right things is foundational. The second is to do right and risk consequences. Now, for those of you who are not Texans, you need to hear this story. For those of you who are Texans and don't know this story, you need to cower in shame. But Sam Houston was the Texans' Texan. Sam Houston led the Army of the Republic of Texas at the time when it won its independence from Mexico. And then Sam Houston went on to become one of the first presidents of the Republic of Texas, and then governor of the state of Texas when it was annexed. And then he went to Washington as a U.S. senator from Texas. And he kept this quote hanging on his wall as a U.S. senator from Texas. And Sam Houston, the hero's hero, ended his career name-called, ridiculed, reviled, and both figuratively and literally spat upon because of his opposition to slavery and secession. We have leaders today advocating things that we should be ashamed of, and we should have the courage to stand up and say, I don't want anything to do with anyone who is willing to advocate for the kind of hate and misogyny and racism and other types of divisiveness that people are getting rewarded for in today's world. But we've got to understand, when we stand up to do right, lots of times it comes with consequences. So part of it is not just willing to do right or to speak up, it's having the courage to endure the consequences. And that's hard to do. And it's one of the reasons we want you to hear the kind of stories that you've heard this morning that are ordinary people doing extraordinary things, because we've got to be willing to risk those consequences to do the right things. The third is to do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. It's so easy to say and so hard to actually walk that talk. But if you can truly begin to lead in that style, you will begin to transform your relationships. You will transform your leadership style. You will transform the people who know you and follow you. And then finally, made famous by Robert F. Kennedy in his ill-fated run for the presidency in 1968, some look at the world as it is and ask why. I look at the world as it could be and ask why not. See, part of what's happened, a servant leadership outlook, is it's not about me and it's not about now. A lot of our political dysfunctionality is because we have abandoned any sense of thinking about the long-term implications of our decisions. And as we've cowered from the criticism, what has happened, we've become increasingly now-centric. And we don't really do the things that matter for the long term for our communities. The number one responsibility for any leader is raising up the next generation of leaders. To those of you who are relatively late in your career, you need to be putting a tremendous portion of your energy into raising up the next generation of your leaders. To those of you who are younger in your career, I want you to go back to what I shared yesterday from the book, The City Manager, A New Profession. The city management, local city management profession, local government professionalism was born as a reformist movement that was swimming upstream. The city manager form of government was founded as a reformist effort to stand strong against corruption and all of the stuff that came with that was so dysfunctional. And we made progress for so many years, and while I don't believe that history repeats itself, it does rhyme. For those of you who are young leaders, this is your moment to become the reformists for our future. We face many of the same issues that the fires are being fanned currently that we faced at the turn of the last century when the council manager form of government was founded. But we also are facing incredible new challenges that, quite honestly, for an old man like me, just makes me tired to even think about it. When you think about artificial intelligence and what changes it's going to create in our society, when you look at what is taking place with climate change, when you look at the misogyny and the racism and the fans that are being flamed by people that normal people that you think are good people are willing to embrace and stand up and support people who are overtly driven by hate, you've got your work cut out for you. But instead of giving up, what I want you to urge you to do is to grab hold of the reformist spirit of the founding of professional local government. Grab hold of the spirit of our profession and what drove its creation and that reformist spirit, and then look to the examples of the people you've heard from and about this morning and dedicate yourself to saying, I have a duty to stand up and make the world a better place. And I have the courage to respond to that duty in the way I live my life. I want to share a song with you here. No, I'm not going to sing it. I want to share a song with you here just a second, if you'll look at the words as they put it up. Don't be naive and think that leadership is pain-free. Don't be naive and think that leadership doesn't come with broken bones, because it does. But live your life in a way so that years after you're gone, and your children and grandchildren begin to discover stuff about you that you never told them, that they go, wow, that's the kind of person I want to be. That's the kind of leader I want to be. The world is changing, and it's changing rapidly. I appreciate your commitment to joining SGR in being on the transition team so that we change the world into a better place, not a lesser place. Thank you for being with us today. Go out and make a difference. Thank y'all.